Got it.
Be those messengers.
Got it.
So
Got it.
again, that
Finally.
would be Pedro Gonzalez. So what street are you working on?
Shelter.
Shelter. Then we have Stan Dunn. What street are you working on?
Seashore, that side.
Okay. Then Julia Larson.
Yacht Lane?
Yacht Lane. We have more than me. I'm working dockside, and I believe the one that's a bit north, and I forgot. Driftwood, right? Then on that one.
Haven Drive.
Mimi Jo. She's over there in the which one, and we'll get to, I think she works on everything. And then Rubio. Richie Rubio, and then Quebec Street you're working on. So as you see, there's a lot of streets that we're doing double time on and covering. And I think what we're going to do now, I think Stan will kind of talk a bit about how the meeting's going to proceed and kind of the rules. There's going to be, and so let me just real quickly, Stan's going to talk about the rules. Then we're going to have a FRAC with Shelley. Then we're going to have a presentation by Larry Meta by a video conference. And then a presentation by Karen and Jeffrey. And then we'll follow up with a couple of informative videos. Maybe some you've seen, one by John Oliver, another one. But actually, I watched last night. It was a TED Talk. And it kind of gets to the heart of where we are. And again, we're really a part of America. And when I look out this room, I think we've got to really look at the really collectively. So Stan.
Will.
Thank you, Will. My name is Stan Dunn. I've been at the Franciscan for 22 years now, so I kind of know some of the history. Today's an informational meeting. So what we want to accomplish today is these good people who are giving up hours on a Saturday to come here, they want to help us to understand what is a cooperative, how does a cooperative work, and if we want to do a cooperative, how do we set that in motion and make a cooperative occur here? So that is the purpose of today's meeting, is to provide information and education so that you all, our community, can make informed decisions moving forward on what to do and how to do it. So the presenters are going to be providing us with information. If you have questions, in fact, if you have questions already, look for precinct captains that will be lining around. They will have cards and pens so you can write your questions down and then hand them back, and we'll collect all of those so that we can get your questions in an orderly manner. I believe after one presentation there will be questions taken from the floor. I'm pretty sure that's Larry's presentation. And I do ask that you keep your questions brief and to the point. We have an awful lot of information to kind of pass through, so we really need to sort of keep things moving. We will be having additional meetings after this, forum meetings like this, to have discussions, debates, things of that nature. That's all internal for our community discussions on this topic. But today, these folks are providing their time, so we want to give them the courtesy and respect to provide us this information. So today it's going to be questions only. There will not be discussions or statements or anything of that nature. So in order to move things quickly and get as much information to you so that you know what this is all about and whether or not you think we should move forward. A lot of people in this room think this is a good idea. So that's kind of where we're at, and we want to move ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Sin to introduce our panelists. And hopefully you guys will all be able to learn enough to make an informed decision. And of course, meet with your precinct captains, because they're going to be having packets of information so that you're getting the right information about what we're doing. I know there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of questions. So start getting pens and start getting your questions out there so that we can try to get them all addressed, as many as possible. Any questions that are not addressed, see the precinct captains so that we can help you out and have discussions.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. First off, thank you all for coming in this rain. Thank you. And I would like to introduce FRAC's attorney, Shelley Buchanan.
Hello, my name is Shelley Buchanan, and I am an attorney who has been representing the FRAC for a number of years now. I believe it's almost 10 years, and I've met many of you, although there are so many faces in the room. Usually when I address you, these things can go on and on and on, but today we have a video conference lined up with Larry Matthew of the National Cooperative Bank, who is ready and willing to tell you today how this park can become a resident-owned park. And it's very exciting because we've had such a long struggle in getting the settlement agreement approved and planning for the transfer of the park from the present owners to a new entity. And we've done a lot of research and found professionals to help put this deal together, and we believe that this proposal of transferring the park to the FRAC as a cooperative is the very best way to ensure that the ownership of the park is passed to a corporate entity in which each household is an owner if they choose to become a member of the cooperative. I can't stress enough how much of a benefit that would be to each household to become an owner instead of a renter. So if you take nothing else away from today, just think, owner, do I want to be an owner before I go to sleep? Think like this at night. Do I want to be an owner or do I want to be a renter? And I think that that is the most fundamental point for today. The other point is there's some technicalities with the transfer that if we do transfer the park to FRAC as a resident-owned co-op, there's some tax benefits, property tax exclusion benefits that ensure that any increase in rents will be minimized if we take advantage of transferring to the FRAC. So, to make a long story short, the park has to transfer. That was the class action litigation for the settlement, and many of you remember all of that. But there is a financial benefit that's built into the structure that we can talk more about in subsequent meetings, and we outlined that in the materials, but that's a very important point of why the park should transfer to the FRAC as a limited equity housing cooperative. The other important point is that as a co-op, each household that becomes a member has a vote. So the board of directors of FRAC will effectively make all of the decisions, and the FRAC board will be 100% residents, no outside housing sponsors, no outsiders will be making decisions, no Daly City representative on the board of the park. All of the important decisions about the park, about repairs, maintenance, rent increases, all of those things that have been sources of contention over the past years will be in the hands of the residents to make the best decisions going forward. That's a very important point that I think needs to be stressed. So after Larry gives his presentation to explain what the National Cooperative Bank can do for the park in terms of loaning money to a co-op to refinance the existing bond debt, then we will have a presentation by attorneys from Wolfhard and Lippman. Karen Tiedemann and Jeffrey Stryker will be explaining the ins and outs of the FRAC co-op, and they have years and years of experience in developing all sorts of different types of co-ops, housing co-ops in the Bay Area, different types of co-ops throughout the United States, and they will have a level of background and detailed information to be able to share with you, and then we will have time at the end for some questions and answers. Preferably, I believe that there's some cards and people could write out their questions and pass them to the precinct captains to submit to the people presenting the information. So with that, I would like to pass this on for Mr. Mackey.
So this is a little bit informal. Let me get this hooked up and we'll be use the other connection to the projector. And can we have the lights drop? It will help everyone see in the room. Thank you.
For people who are still standing, there's some seats spread throughout here. So come down and look. There's 2 here, 1 there.
Don't be afraid to sit in the
More
front.
over here. Okay? Now would be a good time if you want to see.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us?
You guys don't sit down?
Hello. Okay, we can hear you, so go ahead. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect, good. So we hear you.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Larry.
That was a yes. Did you hear that? That was a yes. Okay. Did you hear? Did you hear us?
I heard everyone.
Awesome. So go ahead, Larry. You're in charge.
Yep.
Go ahead with the presentation. Go ahead.
All right. Are you going to put the PowerPoint up?
Yes, I am. Here
Okay.
we go. 1 second. We're at the first page.
All right. First off, I'd like to thank you for having me at your meeting tonight. And I apologize that I can't be out there in person. But I'd like to be able to tell you a little bit about National Cooperative Bank and who we are and what we do. So, as you will see on the first PowerPoint page, we work together to build communities. And the NCB story, which is on the second page, we deliver banking and financial services to cooperative organizations, nonprofits. We have a special focus on cooperative expansion and economic development. We were organized in 1978 under the National Consumer Cooperative Bank Act and privatized in 1981 as a cooperative financial services company. Now, the reason we were created back in 1978 is that we were created to take care of the underserved market of cooperative housing. And the majority of the cooperative housing in the United States was built in the late 60s and early 70s. In 1988, we expanded to a full-service bank where we took deposits, and we purchased a federally chartered savings bank. In 2014, we converted ourselves to a national bank. Today, we're owned by over 3,100 customers participating in the success of NCB. Has anybody ever heard of the Land O'Lakes? That is a cooperative. Ocean Spray Cranberry, that is a cooperative. Those are the type of companies that own NCB. So we are a cooperative, and we are owned by our members. If you were to successfully move to a cooperative, you would become one of our owners. Today we have assets of $2.4 billion, and we have an additional investments under management that total $7.7 million. The third page is our mission. So we're to support and be advocates for America's cooperatives and their members, especially in low-income communities, and we provide innovative financial and related services. Fourth page is our core area of focus. We work with community-owned housing such as co-ops, community associations, homeowners associations. We work with retail-owned grocers and consumer-owned food cooperatives. We work with small businesses. We work with consumer-owned credit unions and credit union service organizations. We have a big presence with Native Alaskan and Native American organizations, and we are also a community development financial institution. Our real estate lines of business, which you would be part of if you were to finance with us, would be to provide loans, deposits, cash management to take care of any and all deposits that you have. We support multi-family home ownership communities, as I said, in housing cooperatives and condominiums and HOAs, which are homeowners associations. So in cooperative housing finance, what we do is we help create co-ops, which is what you are looking to try and do. You are trying to convert over from a private enterprise over to a cooperative form of ownership where each one of you would be an owner of the property. So cooperatives are a single-purpose entity whose purpose is to own and operate the cooperative for the benefit of their members, which you would be members of. The cooperative owns the property in fee simple interest, both the land and the underlying cooperative and the improvements thereon. The member residents own a share of the cooperative corporation, and you sign a proprietary lease that affords the right to occupy the space, the specific space. So in your particular position, the land would be the cooperative, and your mobile homes would be yours, which you could transport and move any place that you want to. Why do co-ops borrow? One, to put to an endeavor such as what you're trying to do, to purchase a property so that you could become a cooperative. We provide financing for capital improvements. We're also there to replenish capital funds, and we require that you maintain at least 10% of your operating reserves. So in your particular case, whatever the gross revenue would be, you would have to have at least 10%. And so if you had a $3 million gross revenue, we would expect you to hold 10% of that, or $300,000 in the form of reserves. So what you would have, if we were to finance you, you would have what we call a blanket mortgage or a first mortgage on the property. The loan is secured by the real property, the ground underneath it. You maintain your mobile home. And what we do is we take an assignment of all the leases and receivables and accounts in the personal property of the co-op. The leases would be those which would allow you to live on the property itself, the proprietary lease. Excuse me. There are two things to do with the co-op. You as a limited equity co-op could have share loans, which would be those loans that would be able for you to go on out and do improvements to your particular property. Some of the housing co-ops that we've worked on in the past, we own probably about 45% of the market share of cooperatives in New York City. And you'll see here that you have Amalgamated Housing Co-op, that's on page 11. Amalgamated Housing Co-op, which is in the Bronx, New York. That was a $30 million mortgage that we provided, plus a $14 million line of credit for that limited equity co-op of 1,482 units. And that is the oldest limited equity co-op in the United States, and that was for improvements to the property. More recently, we provided a $7 million mortgage to create a new co-op in Shawnee, Kansas. That was one of 5 that I'm currently working on to create new co-op housing throughout the United States. The next page, or I should say, the next page shows of the resident-owned communities that we have. In 2015, we focused on working to provide capital to convert manufactured home cooperative communities to limited equity co-op housing, which is basically what we would be trying to do with you. Some of the loans that we've done, which you can see on the next page, which would be page 13, you would see that we provided $11.2 million for 148 units in Massachusetts, another 247 units, and another almost $11,500,000 loan for another mobile home park. As you can see, we have an expertise in being able to convert cooperatives or mobile home parks into cooperatives. So basically what we would be doing, if you were so inclined to go forward with this, would be that you would then convert the property to a co-op, and you would be the owners of the co-op. Each one of you would have a vote. You would be creating your own destiny as to how you would want to operate the property. You would own it. You would be the owners. You would not be paying anybody else. You would not be subject to a landlord or anybody else raising fees up on you that you would not be able to control. You control the whole entity. I'm open for any questions if anybody wants to ask me any questions.
There you go. So, any questions? And go ahead.
Okay, so basically, this is just a change of management of what we have right now. Putting through the 2,500 that we would put in is going to the bank, and the bank is going to hold that money, of course, from all of us. But we're only changing basically management. We will never own the piece of property here. Obviously, we're going to own our mobile homes, but we're just changing management. That's all. That's the bottom line, isn't it?
So the question is that this is simply a change of management. That this is simply a change of management. We're going to be paying the bank, but nothing's going to change, and we're not really going to own anything. That is the question being made. Is that correct?
Will, could you repeat that question for me? I couldn't hear it that well.
Okay, sorry guys, we're going to connect. Larry, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Larry? Larry, can you hear me?
Okay, what was the question again?
Okay, hold on one second. We're going to try another way of communicating. So, okay, we're going to actually take the mic. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's much clearer.
Okay, that's what I thought. We're going to move this, and we're going to do this.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Everyone here? That's a much better one. I think you can hear it better. Okay, so the question, Larry, was, is this just switching property management? And in theory, you never really own the property. Is that your question?
Correct.
Okay. Larry, you want to address that?
Yes, you actually, the co-op will own the property, and you as members would be owners of that. If this is a corporation, if you own stock in a company, if you own stock in Apple, for instance, you are an owner of Apple. Co-ops work the same way. So in this particular instance, the co-op owns the property, and you are members. What you do is you are shareholders in that cooperative. You elect the board of directors, you elect a president, the treasurer, and you work together and to set up all the rules that you want to have in the co-op, what we would call house rules. Your attorneys would also set up bylaws and organizational documents for you that would create the co-op, which is the corporation, the single asset entity, which creates the vehicle for you to be owners by owning shares in the property. You should have a property manager on site. You work with the property manager because they will take care of the day-to-day operations of the property, and you, as members, would elect your board of directors who would meet on a monthly basis to review all the financial aspects of the co-op, how you want to run things, how you would set budgets, if there's a need for capital improvements. And what you do with the co-op is that you operate it so that it's for your benefit. You just don't raise rates up just for the sake of raising rates up. You would raise them up to take care of any extraordinary expenses that may occur, or if some other expenses go up during the course of the calendar year, such as maybe utilities or trash, something to that effect. That would always have an annual basis to it. So you are the owners. You're not just switching out to another property manager. You run the place yourself.
So, Larry, I'm going to kind of reiterate and make sure we can see. The point here is it's like owning stock in Apple. You don't really own Apple, or you own Apple through the share of it. And what I'm saying is that everybody owns Apple, that shares in Apple. Not an individual, but everybody. And you hire, in our case, who's managing it. We, the property shareholders, will then determine how it's managed and how the rent is distributed.
The question is, we sell our home, but we also sell it at the house farm.
Okay, well, I think there's another, Sam, you want to weigh in on that interpretation?
The question is, do you own the land under your house?
You own a share.
Let Larry.
Okay, so in this particular case, the co-op is formed to own the land and all the other buildings that may be on site, such as the building that you're in right now. You maintain ownership of your manufactured home. You can move it, you can replace it, you can do whatever. But what the co-op owns is the land itself. All the roads, streets, utilities, etc., that provide you the services so that you can live there. And you are in charge of that. You are the people who are going to govern how that property is going to be run. So you maintain and own your own manufactured home, but what you are paying for is the ability to live on that property or on that lot for your vehicle, much like what you're doing right now. But the difference is that you are the owner of it. You get to set the rate. Nobody else gets to set the rate.
People have the camera.
Thank you.
Who's running the show?
No. Condominium is owned by you as an individual, and what you do is you are part of a homeowners association. And in that regard is that you own your particular unit, and you pay a maintenance fee for that. But what happens in that regard too is that you can have a lot of investors who get into the property and can force you to do certain things that you may not want to do as a homeowner. In a co-op, you have the right to rule yourselves, whereas in a condominium association, you are one of many owners. You may elect the board of directors, which you typically would have it in there, but you own your own unit itself. You're free to buy it, to sell it, and do whatever you want to do. With a co-op, you have the ability to admit who you want into the property based upon whatever the share price is, and you can trade your property, and you can trade your lot off just like somebody would be in a condominium. But two differences. The co-op is that the corporation owns it, and you as a stockholder own that. In a condominium, you own your property, you own your unit outright.
So, how can I sell? So I can sell my home and then transfer off the property and then sell my property to somebody else. You don't have So I share that way, the corporation would pay you back your membership. Okay, and what is that fee based on? It's based on your original investment. He's saying if he was
itself is actual manufacturing, but he still has some interest in engineers that he can also sell to somebody who's then
Where's my camera back? I need the back.
or to sell back to people.
Okay, so in that regard, is that the land runs with the co-op, and that has a transfer value to, let's just say it's $2,500, just for the sake of it. But your manufactured home may be worth $50,000. You are able to transfer that share, I mean, to that lot that you live in, where that manufactured home is placed on, transfer to the corporation can either buy it, or they have a list of people who may want to come in and buy it, and that typically happens with limited equity co-ops. Whereas people want to come on in and they buy it, and they will buy that share for that lot that's there, and then you would set up your own bargain and sale for your manufactured home. Two separate transactions.
How would it not like that?
Gotta move that card out of the way. People keep walking on me.
Sir, did you have a question there?
Yeah, can you repeat the question?
Can you just repeat the question?
I'm connected to the easy spot. Man, excuse me. Right here.
So, again, next.
I've got a couple of written questions.
Okay.
Who will be handling the money and expenditures, and will they be responsible?
Did you get that question?
Okay, who will be handling the monies and the expenditures? Is that correct? Is this once the co-op is formed, is that correct? Okay. So what you typically do is you would have a management company that you would work with. You are the controllers of those funds. So you have an operating account where you deposit all the rent checks and everything. You then cover your expenses, and then you have a reserve fund. You are the owners of those funds. You control them. The management company works with you to help facilitate how the operations run. And sometimes sometimes co-ops have the management companies, pay the bills, but the treasurer of the co-op may have to sign. So there's any number of ways of working through this. And we can provide technical assistance for you to help you through that process.
Question here, how much will the rents be if we establish the co-op? And how much of the 2,500 be used particularly if not completed transfer, where does it go?
All right, two separate questions on that. So the $2,500, which I recommended, was a way to find you as residents of the co-op, gauge your interest in if you want to go forward with this. Those funds, as I would see them right now, I don't have, they would be put into an escrow account held by a third party. I think Shelley has worked on that along with Karen and Jeff on that aspect of it. They would be used for the benefit of you as a co-op. So if the sale was of the co-op, if the property were transferred over to the co-op, those funds would be allocated towards any and all capital improvements that need to go into the property if necessary, or they would be allocated towards the basis of reserves. That would be the establishment of your first initiation fee into the property. Thereafter, you can create and say that the share price may be worth $5,000, so you just double your money. That's what the transfer value would be. That would be set up in your organizational documents. What was the second part of the question again then?
Is it bonded? People handling it bonded?
So typically that's taken care of under an insurance policy that you have. And so you have a crime policy, and you have a fidelity policy in there. And you would want, if you have a management company, you want them to be bonded also. But remember, these are your funds. You have a treasurer, you have the president, you have everybody else who's managing these funds. They are put in a bank, and you set up as to how you want the money to be controlled. If you want 3 signatures on a check, that's what you can do. If somebody has the ability to sign off and pay your normal bill, say it's a water utility bill, that gets paid automatically. Somebody has to send a check, or you can do that under an ACH form of payment. However you want to work that.
If the transfer doesn't go through, what happens to the $2,500?
When you say if the transfer doesn't go through, if the sale doesn't go through to become a co-op, then that money would be returned back to you. With that money is, the way I'm looking at it is that money is money good for you to show your interest that you want to become a co-op and that you want to become owners of your property. That money is what I would consider to be the downstroke or the down payment to allow you to acquire the property. Right now, I can tell you, we have gone back out and looked at it, and that the property is pretty valuable. It can be acquired by somebody else, and then if they acquire it for a significant amount of money, more than what you have in place with what Shelley has negotiated, you could wind up paying an exorbitant amount of money for your property if it goes out on the open market. This is a good way for you to control this is a good way for you to control. Right now, the way I've budgeted everything, based upon the financial statements that have been given to me, your rents that you're paying right now would not need to increase. It would stay right where it is.
Why would we still have to pay rent if we own the place?
Yeah, because what you've done is, in order to do this, you've created a mortgage, and the mortgage amount to pay off all the bonds, based upon the information I have, is $53 million. So what I would do is a $53 million mortgage, and based upon the current rents that you are paying right now, there would not be need to be increased.
Which answers the question, what was the rental status?
So you're saying we do own the property?
Sir, let me ask you a question.
Own the land.
Not own your own plot, no.
Collectively.
Everybody here, all 500 own the entire
Collectively.
Oh, I'm just repeating what I know.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think what she's doing is summarizing and understand, it's up
Is
here.
that what you do understand it to be?
I understand that you're telling us that you're owning our land or a portion of it.
Correct. Yeah.
Because all the common.
So you would go from, no, you own a share of a co-op. And so what you would be transferring your rent currently to is a mortgage, a cooperative mortgage. Everyone would be paying into a large mortgage, but that mortgage would mean that we living here are paying ourselves.
We're paying our own mortgage.
That is correct. And what I've done for this property, based upon the cash flow, is that we can have you paying a 20-year mortgage on this property. We can do it on a 20-year term with a 20-year amortization schedule, and you would own the property free and clear after 20 years.
A lot better than
Let me
Link.
ask you a question, sir. What do you pay on a monthly basis for your rent for your property, just for you to stay on that lot that you have?
$13.50.
$13.50. Right now, that's what it would remain at, $13.50.
No. That's not how much.
The residents are the FRAC.
I know, but the residents might decide to
Why don't we do that? I mean, only financially, we have a
financially, we would be paying the same
Okay, so Larry, the question here is
Can we have a little quiet?
so the question is could this change, or what would cause the change of the mortgage
Somebody
per
must have
month?
taken
So
photos.
can you comment on that, Larry? Is that a fair interpretation of your question?
What would change? What what I proposed at this point, and I've shared with Shelley, Jeff, is that I'm proposing to do a 20-year mortgage with a 20-year term at a fixed rate for that entire period of time.
Is there a mortgage after that?
There's a lot of people submitting questions.
Well,
People who try to dominate the
there'd be a
whole
mortgage on it
process.
if you want to do capital improvements to the property if you didn't have sufficient reserves. Listen, everything that we do is to set you up to make sure that you are successful. And quite frankly, I'm out there working, I visit all my properties at least once a year. And I make sure I come in and I sit in with board meetings. And I'll tell you whether you're doing something right or you're doing something wrong. You don't have many lenders that'll do that with you.
Okay, guys, we do have some written questions here. We're going to go through those questions.
The remaining written questions are more
Okay. So then we're not open forum? No? Okay. Well, I think the idea here is let's write down the question real quick, and then we'll get it up front. So if you don't have a piece of paper, raise your hand, and then we'll get brought to you right away. And I think what's really important here is that Larry's going to be here as long as it takes. He loves the questions, actually. He wants to participate in all these questions. And, okay, I guess Pedro will keep doing it. But we have the other attorneys. But I think what's key here, guys, is that these questions can continue. This PowerPoint can be provided to you. And Larry, I think at key points will be available for community discussions at a later date. What shall you look at that?
I should do some extraordinary circumstances occurred right at this moment. I was not able to make it out there. But I can be out there in June if you want to have another community-based meeting. And what I will do is I will have my management with me so that you can see who they are, what we are, and show that we're not blowing smoke on this thing. We have an invested basis to continue to make co-ops grow. And that's what we do. And we would love to have Franciscan become a cooperative.
Me too. Thank you.
Actually, a very good question. Somebody wants to know if people can buy multiple shares and become a majority shareholder.
No.
That's not the question. I wrote the question. Good
No,
question.
that's us.
How is this not like stock? Right? So in stock, anyone can buy stock. Apple, anyone can buy a share of Apple, can buy as many shares of Apple as they want. How is this different? What are the limits on buying and selling the shares? Do you have to be a resident to buy a share? Can a non-resident buy a share? Can a non-resident buy more than one share? I mean, well, no. I would assume it's no, but they haven't said it.
Our understanding, Larry, is that each resident is allowed to buy one share. And there are the 500 residents that will no more than 500 shares. Is that the way to say it?
That is correct. That is correct. Now,
Can you buy multiple shares?
Can you?
so, okay, can I address that for a moment?
Yeah.
If the zoning within the community were to allow you to have combined 2 units or 2 lots together, then you would be picking up another share. However, and that would have to be something that would have to be discussed within your organizational documents and your bylaws, whether you would allow somebody to do that. Remember, this is one vote, one share. That's how it works. So if you were to combine two lots together, that still remains as one vote.
But so you cannot sell your share to, say, a real estate company like Alliance Homes, which comes in here and buys all these homes, tears them down, and puts up their spiffy new prefab housing. Right? So in other words, can you be forced under distress to sell your interest in the co-op? I assume the answer is no.
Can you, can you, it was hard to hear the question. Could you repeat that for me, please?
Come up with that question. Sorry for the wonkiness of this. Hard to break it up.
No, that's okay.
Is share ownership then limited to active residents of the park? So if I have a share and I was in financial trouble, could I, not that I would want to do this, but could someone be coaxed into selling their share to a third party? I'm assuming the answer is no, because you say one share. A person can only own one share. So basically, there's no way for somebody to come in through a back door and essentially take this over, like you wind up with another 100.
No, sir, because what happens is you, as Board of Governors, Board of Directors, are going to have a membership committee. And you're going to vet, and as along with your management company, you're going to vet anybody who moves into that property. You want to see that they have the right credentials to move into the property. You don't want to see that there's been any criminal activity in their backgrounds or anything to that effect. You want to see that they have a good credit score and their creditworthiness, that they're able to come on in, that they're going to maintain a high standard of character in the property. That's what your board will do. You don't want to admit anybody into the property that could cause it to go into decline. That's the benefit only of having a cooperative. You get to see who you want to come on into the property. Of course, you still have to work with fair housing laws, but the fact of the matter is, you want good quality people coming into the co-op.
Okay, I think we're going to move to the next phase of the presentation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, Larry, Sunny Kennedy, president of FRAC.
No, you're not.
I have a few questions. I'm speaking here as a homeowner. And my question, Larry, is all these discussions that we need.
Could you, Sonny, could you come a little closer so I can hear you?
Larry, I just want to be sure that everybody here gets the right information that FRAC needs to own the park before we can even go into this discussion. And are you aware of what the court order says on this transfer? That the transfer first should go to FSC, and if it doesn't work, it will go to FRAC. That court order needs to be followed. So my direct question is, how will you be able to transfer ownership to FRAC so we can tell everybody, you pay me $2,500 and you will have a share in the ownership? Without FRAC owning the park, we cannot promise any share ownership stocks whatever.
So what is your question?
What's the question? That's the question. Right?
Okay, so Sonny, let me address you for a second here. Since you seem to have a good handle as to what's going on with some of these things, but you also have several attorneys who are working for you to help facilitate this transfer. And the fact is, Shelley has worked pretty hard to get this to where you could acquire the property. You have to let your attorneys work through that process. I'm here, and NCB is here to provide financing if and when the transfer is approved by all parties. So you would have to address that question to your counsel. You have to address it to Shelley, Karen Peterman, and also to Jeff.
I think that's the part we're going.
Okay?
So this is a part where I think it's actually great transition to the attorneys that are actually here. Larry is really providing the financial aspect of this. And to kind of break down is the conversation that we're having is how do we get that engagement between the transfer, the loan, the court orders and all that. And I think this is a part where we'll transfer to Shelley and the other parties here. And I think your refinement of the question here, Sonny, is pretty good. And I think this is the time we're going to spend time walking through this, because I think it needs to be slowed down. We all need to talk about it, and we're going to move forward. So Larry, I want to thank you for joining us this evening. And
June, have a nice sit down with Sonny and explain to him how this whole thing works, so that everybody gets a fair shot at everything, and so they fully understand what's going on, and that there are no hidden agendas going on. We're being very open about this whole thing. We're here to help you become a cooperative, and you can create your own destiny. So I look forward to coming out and meeting with you in June, if you would have me.
Yes, we would. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
have a good night.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that actually would turn out to be a decent talk, right?
Technical difficulty.
Some technical difficulty, but we worked through it. It's our first time to do this. So I think we're going to turn it over to Shelley and her team, and they're going to talk about it. And I think what's important here, and I think what's been illuminated, is there's a dynamic that we got to walk through. Please.
We've got your questions, but if you didn't get a specific answer, see your precinct map. We're getting this information.
Yes.
You're on the screen.
There's a lot here that he kind of said an answer, but he kind of didn't. I think it's a good point. And I think, so if you guys have all the questions, people who don't get their questions answered should fill out a card. You guys should proofread them and be ready for June when he answers.
Hello, thank you. We haven't finished our presentation, and we still have the attorneys to give the presentation, so we still have opportunities to ask questions and to answer questions.
Yeah,
So we will
the way this is going, we'll have all meeting where people are not getting the answers they want. I understand what you guys are trying to do, but there's, I know, but
Just wait until the meeting's done, okay? Yeah, so.
Let the attorney speak.
Yeah, so wait for them to finish the presentation, okay?
So before I transition over to the attorneys from Goldfarb and Littman, I would just like to make a broader point that this is your opportunity to own the park.
Collectively.
Don't blow it.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening. I'm Karen Tiedemann. I'm an attorney with Goldfarb and Littman, and I have worked with co-ops and mobile home parks and mobile home park co-ops for my entire career of 30 some odd years. So Goldfarb and Littman is a law firm in Oakland. We primarily represent affordable housing developers and public agencies, and a lot of our work is with existing co-ops and in creating new co-ops. And we worked with, I was trying to remember how many, I'm not going to remember, but we've done the conversion of mobile home parks many times. So Shelley brought us in because we have that background, and we have the background with co-ops, and we understand California law with regard to co-ops. So, you know, I've been listening to all of your questions to Larry, and I think I'm going to sort of keep this presentation short because I think there are a lot of questions, but I do want to just go over a couple things. So what's being proposed here tonight is to convert the Franciscan to a limited equity cooperative. And a limited equity cooperative is sort of a unique creature in California law that essentially says that you all as members of a corporation will own this mobile home park. You own it collectively. So you don't own your individual spaces. What you own, as Larry said, is you own a share in the corporation that owns the property. And you govern that corporation. You elect a board of directors. That board of directors represents you in regard to making decisions about how the park is managed. A really important feature about a limited equity co-op is that once you set the transfer value, so let's say it's $2,500, that value will increase, but it will only increase by a set amount every year. So the equity and the value of the land stays with the corporation. And that's really important, and particularly living in the Bay Area, as we all know, land is exceedingly valuable. And the problem that we're seeing with mobile home parks up and down the Bay Area is the land itself is more valuable than anything else, and these parks are being closed and converted for other uses. So by you owning the land, you control that. The park can't close, the park will be here. The value of your shares will be set, and you yourself, the corporation, will set the rents. Now, a lot of the questions that people have for Larry get to the heart of probably the most important thing that needs to happen in terms of converting this to a cooperative. There's a lot of steps in California law that we're going to have to go through. But one of the most important things is to amend the existing bylaws for the FRAC. Because those bylaws are basically going to be the constitution that governs this park. And you are all going to vote on it. And they can't be changed without a vote from all of you. And so some of the issues that we will cover in those bylaws that we're going to, get input from all of you, and we're going to have to get your vote on is, what is that transfer value? And how much can that transfer value go up by each year so that we continue to maintain the affordability of the transfer value? And that has a real impact on the value of your mobile homes. Because what people are going to buy when you go to sell is they're going to buy your mobile home and they're going to buy your share. And they're going to buy the two together, and so the share and the mobile home together create a value. So we're going to want to look at that transfer value and what threshold or index we use for the annual increases. The other issue that we're going to want to look at, and we do this, the limited equity law in California says that the members of the corporation have to be residents of the corporation, but we also make that very clear in your bylaws. So to the question of could somebody come in and buy a bunch of shares and basically take over control of the corporation, the way we would set up the bylaws, that wouldn't be allowed to happen for a couple reasons. One, there's usually a requirement in the bylaws that you must be a resident of the park to buy a share. And that you cannot be a corporation and buy a share. So you have to be what the law calls a natural person, which means all of us here are natural persons. But you can't be a corporation, you can't be a partnership, you can't be a legally created entity to buy a share. And that's really important for the very issue that was raised. We don't want somebody coming in and buying up all of these shares and essentially taking over your park. Because, as Larry said, it's one share, one vote. That's how the park control is managed. And if you could have a corporation that came in and bought it, I'm sorry, I just got something in my eye. But if you could have a corporation come in and buy them all, you would end up with a different corporation. I'm going to do this partially fine. So those are the things, those are important aspects of what we're going to work on in the bylaws. Also, the bylaws will deal with how your board is elected, how often. Typically, we would have annual elections, but you may not elect a whole new board every year. You would probably want some people to carry over for consistency of management. How many board members there are. And also include what the board's powers are and what items have to go to the membership for a vote. And so there's various things that we would typically go to membership for a vote on. There are things required under California law that you also have to go to membership for a vote. So the other part of converting to a cooperative is we have really strict California laws on cooperatives and condominiums. You follow the same laws as a condominium for your governance. Those laws are designed to protect the residents of the park or the cooperative or the condominium. So we have to abide by those laws. So they're essentially designed to limit in some ways the power of the board to make sure that you as residents get a fair shake. So your bylaws will also incorporate all of those provisions so that we can make sure that we're in compliance with California law. So there's a lot of protections that are going to come into place as part of this conversion. And those protections are designed to ensure that you, the residents, continue to be protected, that your rent stays stable, that the park is maintained. I mean, one of the things that we will work on is setting up a budget so that there are adequate reserves, so that when there are repair needs, they can be met from the reserves, so that there isn't a need for a rent increase and that the rents are kept stable. So it is all designed to be a process to protect you all. And in my mind, the biggest protection is that you're not subject to somebody setting rents that you can't afford or that devalue your mobile home because the rents are so high. Or the real threat that we're seeing around the Bay Area is somebody wanting to close your park so that the property can be used in a different way. So this is a really valuable housing resource, and by converting to a cooperative, you can preserve that housing resource. So I think, do you want to add anything?
I guess I'm driving back. Hi, everybody. My name is Jeff Streifer, and I work with Karen Tiedemann at the law firm Farb & Lippman. And we've been working with Shelley for several months now and trying to figure out exactly what's going to be involved in a co-op conversion. We've been working with Larry, who's offered to provide the financing for the transaction. And Farb & Lippman, as Karen mentioned, has expertise in co-op formation and co-op governance, as well as housing transactions and commercial transactions sort of as a whole, which is really what is involved in selling or transferring a park from the existing ownership to what would be a newly created co-op using the FRAC sort of skeleton that we have now, which is a nonprofit organization, and we would rework that organization to include the set of bylaws, like Karen said, that would be the constitution for how the co-op works. And I just have to say that, seeing everybody here is really great. It's very inspiring to me because we've been working with Shelley and Larry on this for some time now. And one of the critical pieces to making this whole thing work is having the resident involvement and having people. And that's what the membership share price is designed to measure and to demonstrate to Larry as the lender, to National Co-op Bank. I think it's kind of funny because Larry was talking about his properties, and sometimes it seems like he was almost talking as if he owned them, but I think that was more sort of a demonstration of the pride that he has in the projects and the co-ops that he works with, that he takes them very, very much as his own. And I think one of the main differences between having the park be a co-op and having it owned by a different type of entity is that co-ops are not for profit. They're not an investment vehicle. Their whole purpose is to serve the membership, and that's what the structure of co-ops is designed to do. And the governance of the co-op, because it falls under the condominium governance laws, one of the key pieces of that is transparency. And there are very strict requirements for how the organization is supposed to maintain its finances and operate as a whole, and that has to be transparent to the members, to the residents of the co-op. So that's just a critical piece of this. And getting back to the membership share price, that share value is a demonstration to the National Co-op Bank that the residents have skin in the game. That's the purpose of it, that's the meaning. And that share in FRAC that residents would buy when FRAC converts to a co-op would convert into your co-op share. That would become your share. Now, I know there were some questions about what happens if the co-op doesn't form and we've paid that money. We're working right now with an escrow company, a third-party independent licensed escrow agent that is going to manage the funds. The funds would be collected by that escrow agent under an escrow agreement that had strict terms for how the money would be maintained and the conditions under which it would be released. So one of the purposes of those funds as they come in are to pay expenses of the co-op formation, including, for example, paying the escrow fees, because the escrow agent isn't just doing this out of the goodness of her heart. She has to get paid. So there are fees for maintaining the escrow. There are legal fees. There are other types of fees that would be paid through the membership shares as they come in. And if the co-op did not form, the money that was paid in as a share would be paid back. And if there were expenses that were taken out of those funds, that would be shared pro rata across everybody. So the escrow company would maintain those funds until the co-op was formed and pay for the expenses of the co-op formation. And then once people had reached the level of membership that we need to demonstrate to the National Co-op Bank that we have that commitment, National Co-op Bank would loan the money and FRAC could purchase the park and convert to a co-op. So that's sort of the big picture, and I think your presence here is a real demonstration that this is a reality, and I think that it's just inspiring, having worked on this now for some months without seeing the commitment of the residents, and now seeing that you're here and the questions that you're asking are very important questions. And I know everybody's not going to get all of them answered right now, but one of the things that we've tried to do is to set up sort of neighborhood contact points. The precinct captains are people who are tied in, and if your question's not answered here, then talk to your precinct captain. And if they can't answer it, then they'll get an answer for you. But this is a process, and it's going to take time, and we realize it. So I want to thank you in advance for your patience, and I'm really excited to be able to work on this project with you. I've been involved with co-ops for 30 years now, for over 30 years, and it's a passion of mine. Just seeing you here is inspiring. So I think at this point in the program that we will now, Karen, is there anything else, or should we take questions? Okay. I think that the process is that if you write your question down, then we will take the questions up front. Try to stick to that. Okay.
What are the benefits of having a co-op take over ownership in terms of the financial and physical aspects? Is there going to be more cost saving and more improvements to the park?
In terms of cost savings, generally there are options for cost savings as a co-op, and there are some options that Larry might be able to hook you into of cooperative buying through networks of co-ops. But the main thing is you're not doing anything for profit. So right now, in most mobile home parks, there's an owner, and the owner wants to make a profit. That's part of why they're in it. Whereas when you own it, your rents are basically designed to cover your costs. There's not a profit on top of that. So over time, there should be savings from that. So,
If two-thirds of the residents fail to buy in, what is their resident apartment being told to resolve?
well, I don't know that we can estimate that risk, but we are seeing pressure on mobile home parks all over the Bay Area and all over the state of California to convert to different use. So this is a really large park. There are some unique challenges here to converting it to a different use, but we don't know. We don't know what would happen long term.
Does the lender have any control over the reserves of the money in the park?
We would need to work that out as a term with the National Co-op Bank. Often, the National Co-op Bank does want the reserves to be held by the bank, and they often will have a reserve requirement, meaning that every month the co-op would put X amount of dollars into the reserve to ensure that the reserves are adequately funded. As part of the conversion, you will need to come up with a reserve funding plan and a reserve study of the needs for replacement of major aspects of the park over a 20-year period. And then your reserve funding plan will discuss how that's going to be funded with deposits on a regular basis. So that's all part of the conversion. So I would expect that NCB will want to see that reserve funding plan. Most likely they want the reserves in their bank. And whether they have to approve withdrawal from the reserve is something we would negotiate as part of the loan.
If I can't afford membership, how does this affect me as a resident?
I think that's something that we would need to talk about. We, in other parks that have converted in conventional housing that's converted, depending on how the finances work, the co-op has been able to allow the person to pay over time, or there's also options for what are called share loans, and I don't know if NCB would be interested in that here, but some of my co-ops have share loan programs where you can finance that initial buy-in as well.
So you could finance and pay over time your initial...
Yes, yes.
Are we planning any vote today?
No.
Not yet.
The court ruling has both FHC and FRAC listed, FHC being first. How are we leapfrogging FHC in order to have FRAC handle the takeover?
The main point is if we are able to come up with financing to repay the municipal bond debt, which is the role of the NCB here, they're willing to lend the money on a 20-year mortgage loan to retire the bonds, then there's no impediment to transferring the park to the FRAC. At the time that we negotiated the settlement agreement back in 2011, there was no discussion, hope, or momentum to refinance the bond debt. But now we have a real opportunity here on the table where we can do this. So if everybody shows enthusiasm, momentum for establishing a cooperative, then we will be able to get the deal done.
Is the $2,500 an investment? And is it going to pay out?
So as it's envisioned right now, the $2,500 would be essentially the payment for the share, or the initial payment on the share. So it is an investment. And as I said earlier, then when you wanted to sell and leave the park, you would also sell that share. And that share would increase in value on an annual basis based on an index or a percentage that would be determined by the bylaws. So it is an investment. There are non-annual dividends. So the idea here with the co-op is that the co-op is going to set the rents such that at the end of every year, essentially, they're going to break even. Because otherwise, they're charging you rent that you then would give back as a dividend. So the only revenue stream coming into the co-op is rent. And that rent pays the operating expenses, the maintenance expenses, and the mortgage, and the reserves. And, you know, if we do it right, at the end of the year, we match those up perfectly. So there isn't dividends. But the dividend is your rent stays stable.
So we have we're got a Warriors game coming up. And so I'm going to say 3 more questions, Stan. We're going to get to 3 questions, and then we're going to move on to some other items. And again, I think everyone's excited about June coming out, and I think, go ahead.
Well, the one thing, I know there were a lot of questions, and I would say I think it is a good suggestion. If the questions that we haven't answered, I think we can provide answers in writing, or we can come prepared in June to answer them. There are a lot of questions, and you're going to go home and have more questions. And, you know, we're happy to spend time trying to answer those.
Okay. Are there any additional fees besides that first $2,500?
Well, that really will depend on what we determine the initial share value is. I mean, the way we've talked about it with Larry, no, that we could do it with the $2,500. That would create a sufficient amount of money that could then be used to create the initial reserves. But we're still looking at the financial issues. And so I don't want to say for sure that that's going to be the initial share value, but the hope is that that's what it would be.
Will our property still be eligible for the property tax exemption? And how do we address the co-op members have different incomes and not all of them qualify for that exemption? I think that's the city bond issue.
Property tax.
Property tax. Is the property eligible for property tax exemption?
Basically, if the park is held by a nonprofit, then we can qualify for the low-income welfare exemption to try to reduce the property taxes. So we'll still be doing, if it transfers to the FRAC as a limited equity housing cooperative, there'll still be the forms to submit in order to qualify the low income in order to keep the property taxes as low as possible. But there's another piece to this that's very important that people understand. There's a specific exclusion from reassessment for property tax if FRAC becomes a cooperative, a resident-owned mobile home park, then we can, at the time of the transfer, we can tell the San Mateo County assessor that this is what we're doing, and under Revenue and Taxations Code, section 62.1A, we tell the assessor, don't reassess the property taxes for the mobile home park. And that will be a big savings, because if it transfers some other way, the assessor is going to look at the transaction and say, well, you're making a transfer, what's the fair market value? And they're going to reassess it. But because the legislature has written this specific exclusion into the Revenue and Taxations Code section, it's a big advantage to forming a co-op, because it will keep the operating costs level instead of having a necessary increase due to a reassessment if you do not become a co-op.
And finally, just real quick, what are we now before we get to be a co-op?
We're screwed.
And what is our current status?
You're renters. So right now,
Yeah.
a third party owns the land where your home is, and you pay rent to that landowner, that landlord, for the right to occupy that space. With the co-op as a whole owns the property. You have a share, an equal share with all of the other residents in the corporation that owns the property. Along with your share, you get a right to occupy a particular space in that property. And the money that you pay under that, essentially a lease or an occupancy agreement, as we sometimes call it, that money then goes to pay the operating expenses of the park and provide for the maintenance of the park and provide the debt service for the park, so that, like Karen said, at the end of the year, if everything works out, it breaks even. So that's, right now, you don't own the land. Somebody could buy it. You could be relocated. The property could be repurposed. As a co-op, once the co-op owns the land, the board of directors cannot sell the land once the co-op is formed. If that land is going to be transferred in any way, or that the way that the land is owned by the co-op is going to be changed, that has to be a vote of the membership of the co-op. So even if there's somebody on the board that you don't like, or the board doesn't do what you think it should, then there are checks and balances within the co-op system that keep the board from doing things that are against the interests of the co-op as a whole, by giving the members a vote in those important decisions, like what happens to the land. So
that was my question. The question here was, why did that matter to ready to make a change to go? You know, the sun is cleaning up and stuff that we're not legally set. Are we legally ready to do a co-op? Well, what are the steps that we have to do before we do a co-op? We have to, we're in a situation, right? What are the legal steps we need to do? Not the co-op, to get a co-op. Are we prepared to go into a co-op?
yeah, I don't know if everybody heard that question, but the question is, are we legally prepared to go into a co-op? What are the steps that need to happen to be able to do that? And right now, what the park is operating under is a settlement agreement that came out of litigation that predates our involvement with the project. We were brought on because of our expertise in co-op formation and co-op governance and financing. And I'll just sort of plug in here too that if you have questions about our background, we did put some bio sheets on the table back there for Karen and myself, so you can pick those up. But under the settlement agreement, we have to work with the current park owners in order to implement a transfer. The park has to transfer, and that's going to be a cooperative process in and of itself, a negotiation as to how that's going to play out. And there's the existing financing that has to be addressed, and the new financing that would come in. And so things are going to happen organically, I guess is maybe a good word, but the park transfer is going to be consistent with all of the parties' agreements. And one of the things that I know that the existing park ownership wants to be able to know if this co-op thing is real, and they want to see that the interest is there, the involvement, the investment, the members, the residents' investment in the future of the co-op organization. And in conversation, I think that they're going to help facilitate that transfer, but they have to have a demonstration from the residents that the co-op is going to be there. And that's why Karen and I were brought on, because of the legal technical aspects of setting it up as we go, plus the experience that we have in these types of transactions.
Is there a deadline?
Okay, so, wait, guys, we're gonna segue now.
That's for the next meeting.
That's for the next meeting. I think there's a couple things that I want to give you guys takeaways. as a discussion. Okay, now, again, I'm going to give you a couple analogies here, okay? You go in to buy a car, you don't know if you're going to get the loan, and you want that car. You have a kid. If you were to spend a second to think about all of the factors of having a kid, you would never have a kid. Okay? You just wouldn't. You consider everything about your kid, the teenager, the tattoos, the piercings, all of those things, you'd never have a kid. So I think being skeptical is a good thing. Being cynical, I don't think is in your interest. There's two different things here, guys. Cynical doesn't get you anywhere. Skeptical is good to asking questions, to critiquing, to understand what you're about to do. And I think that's important. But I would ask yourself, if we don't try to do this, I don't need to finish the rest of this. So, I don't know if we actually have a president. We have leadership. There's a group of people. We have an agenda. We're going to transition to the video that talked about Ted. We're going to give Shelley the opportunity to share her parting thoughts. And I'm going to say here is, really guys, I think the notice that we got should tell you the seriousness of the situation. The reason we got that notice to the letters is that it's authentic. We are authentic. The notice had to go out. We are a reality, and we're proceeding. Cynical ain't going to get you anywhere.
Here's my question, excuse me. How can we move on with the co-op format and promise to each co-owner that they pay $2,500? How can we promise that when FRAC
Well, I think...
I have a follow-up question. It is wrong to say that the
Hey, come on.
So I understand the concern, and I understand that Lynn Housing had a note circulated, but that note did not say, no, you cannot form a co-op. It did not say that. If Link Housing, the owner of the park as a nonprofit, wanted us to not form a co-op, they would have said, no, you cannot form a co-op. It doesn't say that. It says, we want more information. This meeting is information, it's a process. It's an opportunity for you to get to know the parties at play and to ask questions. And it's only the first meeting. And as Larry said, in June, he's willing to come out and actually meet everybody who's interested. And I had a conversation with Henry Lowe, who is Link Housing's attorney on this topic, and he is delighted to attend the next meeting in June. So what I would ask everybody to do is to keep an open mind, understand this is a process, it's a change, it's a proposed change. We want to have everybody involved, we want to respect everybody's opinions, but we don't want to rain on the parade at this point because we can do it if we want to. So
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, this is not a done deal. I think that should be clear to everyone. But if you do nothing, you definitely will not own this park. So it is a little bit up to you. We have a lot of steps to go through, and one of those steps is we do need a vote of the residents. And it's so a little bit, this is in your hands. If the residents want this to be a cooperative owned by the residents, then, you know, we're going to do everything to make that happen. Can we guarantee we'll have to know, but we think that there's a good possibility. but you, the residents, have to want it.
Is there a deadline that we can know about?
Not to my knowledge.
Again, I made a couple of these meetings also, I agree with you on this. But I really cannot emphasize enough, the dynamic is different. The dynamic here is different, and I want us to really look at this with a fresh face, with flexibility, and to move forward. Again, critical is great. Let's not be cynical. You guys understand what I'm saying? And we're going to, and so as a part of this, we're going to kind of stream some videos to close out. You guys will leave at your leisure. But at the same time, we'd like you to stick around and watch these. Again, we're going to try to get more connectivity, more emails out there. We do have the info for assistant email. Please take advantage of that.